Hello, and welcome to this session on coaching as a strategic driver for efficient succession planning. At Antwork, we believe that learning from people who have been there, done that, is the best form of learning. At Antwork, we believe that people who have walked the same path before us, they are the best teachers of professional learning. And one such form of learning and leveraging our potential is coaching. Coaching is taking the professional world across the globe by storm. And look, we all have our own limitations. We have our cognitive limitations, we have our intellectual limitations. Forget about that, we have limitation in terms of the time that we have. And that is where coaches, they come and help us maximize our potential through leveraging their experiences, more efficient techniques. And as I read somewhere, it said that coaching or coaches are people who make you see things you can't see, tell you things you don't want to hear, but yet they make you the person that you want to be. And to discuss that, we have a wonderful panel today. And since International Coaching Federation is celebrating International Coaching Week from May 13th to 19th, to understand the power and impact of coaching in professional development, not just for professionals, but also organizations. Organizations are leveraging coaches to take them to the potential that they want their key executives to get. So, no, first of all, I would like to welcome all of you. Let me just try to share my screen very quickly if I can. Okay. Mm, yes, it is slightly difficult. Okay, yeah, right. Hopefully, I should be able to present this. Am I sharing my screen? Okay.
Yes, you are.
Okay. So, to welcome the wonderful panel, I have four coaches who are at the heart of driving coaching initiatives with different organizations. And I would like to welcome Dr. Murali Padmanabhan. Uh, Murali, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on this discussion. Welcome. Murali brings 30 years of executive coaching experience. He's a PCC certified coach and also a TIHR accredited coach. So, Murali, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you, Abhishek, for having me. Really wonderful to be here.
Okay. Next, we have Sridevi. Sridevi brings 25 plus years of driving organizational success. She is a PCC accredited coach herself, and she's a licensed Heal Your Life workshop leader and HYL coach. So, Sridevi, it's wonderful that you can join us today.
Thank you for having me, Sudhanshu.
I also have the pleasure of having Gopal with us. Gopal brings 20 plus years of experience in driving organizational development. And he's an expert in strategic consulting, executive coaching, and gig economy integration. He's also the host of a wonderful podcast, Career Shifts Stories of Reinvention. So, Gopal, welcome so much on this panel today.
Thank you so much, Sudhanshu. Lovely being here.
Okay. And finally, we also have Prashad. Prashad brings 90 plus years of experience driving growth and development across different organizations. He's a PCC accredited coach with ICF, and he is an advanced Hogan certified coach and an ICF accredited coach, training facilitator for level 1 and level 2 programs. So, Prashad, uh, welcome to this virtual event.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you.
Okay. Uh, so my question will straight away dive into the discussion. Uh, we can take audience questions as we approach towards the end. In the last 15-20 minutes, we will take the questions coming from the audience. You got some wonderful response, good registrations for the event, and that's the power of you as coaches. So my first question goes to Sridevi. Sridevi, we talk about coaching, and we talk about that being the backbone of professional growth, both for individuals and for organizations who leverage it. What is your take on how coaching shapes the trajectory of both personal development and organizational success?
Great question to ask, Sudhanshu, and I think the answer is in the word coaching in itself. You've answered the question with coaching, because the ICF definition of coaching itself is partnering with clients in a thought-provoking and a creative manner that inspires them to maximize their personal and professional potential. So coaching delivers exactly that. That's the very purpose on why a client engages with a coach. Now, the question to be asked is, so how does it happen? I mean, I know you made it sound very magical, and the fact that coach knows all the answers. The fact is the coach does not know all the answers. So how does it really happen, and how is the client able to find the answers to themselves? Is because the client will let the coach in through a small window or a door. It could be a personal, it could be a private, it could be an intimate, or it could be a professional conversation that sows the seeds for the need for coaching to begin with. But as you enter that door and you step into the room of the client, then the client and the coachee, the client and the coach is free to explore whatever that they want to explore. Now, the question to be really asked is, why should the organization be invested, right? Why should an organization be invested in the personal development of their leader? Now, I'm going to take a few steps back, and this is something that comes home to me every time. And this is a concept called the happiness advantage, which has been researched and written about by this gentleman called Sean Acker. He has done considerable work around it. And the bedrock of this entire study is that the pursuit of success is inherent in the DNA of every human being. Both you, I, all of us on this call, everybody who's listening in, we are all running for some form of success in anything that we do. Like, even if I want to sleep, my success is 8 hours of sleep, right? So success is relative, and we come to believe that success is what will lead to happiness. And what Sean Acker has studied and has researched about is success does not lead to being happy. Happiness is what leads to success. And that happiness, Sudhanshu, is an internal job. It's a very private thing. What will make me happy is very different from what is going to make Gopal or Murli or Prasad happy. And when you work along with a coach and you are able to, sift through your layers of values, beliefs, identity, incidents, thoughts, accidents, is when you start accessing that code within you of happiness. And once you have accessed that code, you can then apply that code to everything in your life. It could be your health, it could be relationships, it could be your money consciousness. And obviously, if you have an identity of a leader in the professional world, you will apply it in that identity as a leader. And that is how it helps you professionally also. And I think that's my answer to the question on why organizations should be invested in the holistic development of a person, because coaching delivers towards the holistic development of a person.
Yes, absolutely. And when we talk about today's world where workplaces are changing, workforce is changing, the expectations of people from work itself is changing. This pursuit of happiness, and to, which leads us towards some, if I understand well, self discovery with the help of a coach, which propels me towards what I want, what makes me happy, which in turn will drive my success. It's absolutely, the good way to look at it. And that is why organizations should see that, if people at my organization are happy, invested, and if they collectively move towards success, that is what organizational success is all about. So, Dr. Moli, my next question is to you, and which is the topic of the day, is about succession planning. And succession planning is, I would say, Um, it's a challenge. It's not something that organizations want to do well, because it has huge impact on how organizations shape up. However, uh, you know, I work with multiple organizations where succession planning is either ad hoc or not done right, and as we spoke, it has an impact on organizational success. How do you see coaching fitting into this high stakes puzzle, and how does it make coaching a game changer when it comes to grooming future leaders?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Sudhanshu, for that question. I think succession planning is always uh, touched by a sense of, I would say, a sense of fear and anxiety, and I'll tell you why that is. The issue with succession planning is it's you need to really be objective about who is the right person for the right job, and that's very difficult to do. Okay, with all the tools that we have today, it's very difficult from an organizational perspective. The second, the fear is that you cannot be really transparent about this, because you once you have declared somebody as a successor, the successor is just going to wait for the incumbent or for the position to open up. Organizations still, even today, even highly well planned organizations, they do a lot of strategic planning and forecasting and all of that, cannot really predict when the positions will open up. These are two big challenges with succession planning. So, and I think with all the ambiguity and uncertainty that we have in the marketplace today, it's extremely difficult for organizations to really predict when these positions open up. So I think those are the issues that the organizations have to deal with. But I think coaching comes really handy. I think organizations which are really good at it really create a healthy pipeline of leaders who can actually take on these positions when they open up. Right. Now, having said that, how do you create healthy pipeline? And what does healthy pipeline look like? Right. So succession planning, I think the issue is most of us, really become a leader at the first line level is because of our expertise. We are all experts at something. We are doing something very well. That's why you get promoted and you become a leader, right? And then at a certain stage of a leader's life, you become an achiever. You tend to start getting things done. You are responsible for the results that the team produces, not necessarily through your expertise. Okay, because it's slightly at a higher level. But I think what really organizations need today, and especially a fast changing world, is what I call as the catalyst. The catalyst leaders are leaders who really unlock the potential, the hidden potential in the organization, and get the organization to its highest possible levels. This was work done by a person called Bill Joyner. Bill Joyner wrote a book many years ago, I think about a decade or so. It's called The Leadership Agility. And Bill talked about these three levels of leadership. And in Bill's research, he found that most organizations, most leaders stop at the expert achiever level. Very few organizations have leaders who are at catalyst level. Now that's a huge opportunity for people like us to really help leaders who are achievers to get onto that catalyst level. Because today's world, and I'm sure all of us will agree, it's a very, very difficult world out there. Highly uncertain. The rate of change. We have experienced change throughout, our, life on this planet. But I think the rate at which change is happening in today's world is much, much higher. So for leaders to be able to cope with these, we need to really have coaching. And I think coaching is a good tool to kind of prepare leaders to take on these challenges that the marketplace and the environment poses. Yeah. So thank you.
Absolutely. We have seen the uncertainty around succession planning in the British monarchy, where the king had to wait for 70 years to get on the throne. Of course, in organizations, it is also the other aspects of succession planning, wherein there are resistances. If you promote one as a successor, he or she has to work with others in the team. So there are multiple layers to succession planning, which makes it not so easy for organizations to do it. And that is why coaching, as you said, can be a very effective tool to do that. Uh, so, question to Prasad. Prasad, can you share a specific example where coaching has impacted succession planning within an organization?
Absolutely. Now, this is, I was listening to Dr. Murli, and he made some very pertinent points around managing change. How do people step up, and continue to remain with that change? And Sridevi brought a very brilliant point. It's happiness that brings success, and definition of happiness can be different for different people. So recently, I had a debrief with a CEO and a CHRO of a very big multinational, and they wanted one of their leaders to become the successor, right? This was a very different kind of a scenario where it was not an internal leader, but they were hiring from outside so that someone can be a legitimate. And one of the things which they wanted to do was change, right, in the culture of the organization. So they didn't find any internal fit. They went outside in the market to search for someone. They figured out, according to them, the right candidate, and started working with that candidate. After a few months, they realized there is a problem. Okay, they realized there is a problem with this leader who has been hired, who is supposed to be making and driving change within the organization. So the debrief that was given to me was that the leader is excellent at heart, a very nice human being. Okay, comes from a good background, has worked in different cultures across the globe, and they have done some thorough background checks and reference checks along with the interviews so that they get the right person on board. But the problem is the leader is quite blunt. Okay, he doesn't maintain relationships with stakeholders. He challenges them left, right, and center. Right, it's my way or highway that is being driven, and then there are a lot of complaints that have started coming, and the credibility of the CEO and the CHRO is at stake, right? Because they are the ones who have hired him with so much of research, right? So my question was, what has happened from the time that he has come into the organization till now? That they have given a lot of feedbacks, they have had one-on-one conversations. The leader listens to them, says that yes, he will probably try and behave differently, but goes back and does the same thing, right? My next question to them was, what kind of personality assessments or scientifically validated assessments have been done before hiring? So then none of that sort has been done because we have done thorough background checks. We have done multiple checks, and that's how we have got him. And that's when I recommended a particular assessment, which I typically refer to Hogan assessments, which is one of the best assessments in the industry to understand the success rate of that particular leader within the organization. The moment that assessment was done, and the good part was the CEO and the CHRO agreed to do it. So while they have done a lot of mistakes, they kind of agreed because they wanted to give him one chance. They didn't want to fire him. They wanted to create a good successor for the organization. They believed in him. They believed in his abilities because he was great at technical abilities. So we did that assessment, and obviously assessment threw up the results which were expected. But this is what drove the change. After 3 sessions, the leader understood what was really happening. So while he was going as my way or the highway, he understood basis this assessment, which talks about reputation rather than his own ways of thinking, that that's not going to work anyway. He needs to tone down. He needs to take people along with him, right? And as the sessions moved forward, he started becoming more and more assertive rather than becoming more aggressive. And that's what the change started happening. The reason I'm bringing up this story here is a lot of succession planning happens on subjective factors. Is the person expert? Technical abilities? Is he working well? All feedbacks well, generic feedbacks well, sometimes 360-degree feedbacks are also going well. But then there is no science behind succession planning, right? The moment you bring in some scientifically validated assessments, the mirror is shown. And then along with 360, it can become a deadly weapon to know whether the succession planning is really going to work. Because it's not just about the person being good, it's the whole system that is supposed to be supportive, right? And I think that's what starts happening. The moment you become supportive as a system, get some science behind planning your successors within the organization, or even if you're planning to get somebody from outside the organization, things start working in their favor, right? So that's one story which I thought would be quite pertinent out over here to share.
Absolutely. And it is a right story because as leaders, it is not just how good I am, but this is how do I work with multiple stakeholders in my system, and how do I bring the best of all people. It is not just what I think, but it is how do I have people respond, and I create, I engage, inspire, and influence people to bring the best. And if I have a way which doesn't bring the best out of people, possibly that leadership style will not work. So, a great example of how from the top it can make a difference. And Gopal, my
Absolutely.
next question to you is around this culture of this. We spoke about succession pipeline. Dr. Murli spoke about building a homegrown succession pipeline of leaders, which requires a continuous culture. It cannot happen that I wake up overnight and say, now I should have a succession pipeline. Okay. And in that case, a lot of the times they have to choose or prefer, as the example given by Prasad, to source a leadership successor externally. Sometimes I've seen in organizations that it creates resistance within the team. Okay. And you parachute somebody, it creates discontent in people who are already there, different, people who would have been contenders. So there are multiple dynamics at play in an organization. So how will you coach an organization to strike a balance between the two? Because change sometimes is necessary. And how do you minimize teams resistance, uh, but again foster a culture of continuity and growth?
So, wonderful question. And the problem of speaking last is the fact that a lot of people who spoke ahead of you have spoken quite a lot, and you don't know what to. So, no, but I think as Dr. Murli said, he's right. I mean, we are living in an extremely volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world, which is VUCA. And it is resulting into a lot of shifts in the business far too sooner or quicker than how it used to be maybe 10 years ago. So the business cycles are so volatile that it becomes extremely difficult to predict what is going to happen. I was incidentally talking to a new age organization a couple of months ago, and we were working on a OD project proposal, and we were wanting to get some additional perspectives to, solidify what we should propose to them. And the simple question that we asked was, okay, can you give us a 2 to 4 year roadmap of where do you see the organization go? And the response that we got was the max that you can get from us is about 12 months, because we don't really know how far. I mean, we can't really go beyond that given how the tech world has been. I'm not even getting into the MSME sector that is booming right now, where HR practices are literally non-existent. And if you really look at it from that perspective, there are a lot of nice to haves that we are talking about here, where ideally succession planning should have been done this way. We should have a good leader. There should have been a learning needs assessments done, leader needs assessment done. All of that is great stuff, but in reality, a lot of organizations are lagging far behind in that. So that's the context that I would want to start with, right? I mean, in an ideal world, everything should have been done and could have been done, but the the reason why we are all in jobs today is because that's not happening the way it should be, right? What could be done? It's a very good question that you asked, Sudhanshu, and I think if I were to really put it into an acronym format, I would say RCR. You know, first reflect, reflect at what's happening, where you are, what you're doing, where do you want to go. Then calibrate, calibrate on actions that you want to take. Really look at, if you want to do a proper learning needs assessment, leader assessment, actually make that happen. Then recalibrate, because many a times what happens is, at the end of the day, even after calibration, as we again spoke, the world that we're living in, there could be a situation where one change in a geopolitical situation, or what happened in the last year with funding a winter, if you can call that, has a deep impact on what happens. So recalibrate on an ongoing manner. So I think you should probably look at it from that perspective. And then, of course, there are a lot of things that you can do in terms of developing a robust succession planning framework. Identify leaders within the organization or the next in line to be able to see if this person has the right skills, mindset, attitude to be able to take the work forward. And if you really don't see that, then it boils down to a very important yet often ignored element in an organizational and a teaming construct, which is communication and transparency. The lesser you communicate, the lesser you are, honest about what actions you're going to take, it will start creating a bigger disconnect between your current leaders, potential leaders, and whoever you're calling in future as well. So that's what I would say is gonna be my mantra at the end of the day, to get to reduce the conflict, reduce the friction, reduce any kind of challenges within the organization that you may see on as a result of getting someone else from outside as a successor. I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Oh, absolutely. And
Sudhanshu,
yeah,
I
yes,
just
please
want to
go
make a point. I know we are running short of time, but I just quickly want to make a point. When I said that there is fear around or anxiety around, doing succession planning, one of the key issues that the organization has is build versus buy.
ahead.
Right? Uh, should I really develop talent internally and put people up, or should I
Mm.
just go and hire people in the market?
Ready-made
Now
Yeah.
solution.
it seems that one of the ways to take care of the anxiety that I have is, I think that there is better talent outside, and just go and buy, because I can throw money, get the best executive search firms and get the best talent that I have, right? So what really happened? And I solved two problems. I solved problems of internal competition. I say, hey guys, none of you are good enough. I'm getting somebody from outside. Now, when you say that, when you're making that, I mean, you don't say it in the words the way I'm saying it,
Action speaks.
but that's the message that you're sending across, right? So I think organizations which are really developmental focused do have real strategies to deal with some of the issues that you talked about. Competition. How do I really manage my own, erstwhile peers, for example?
Mhm.
I think that's a challenge. That's why I think coaching can really help in terms of, but I think it's an organizational decision, right? Do I really build or buy?
Yeah. And
Wonderful.
we'll talk about it later in the uh, conversation as well, wherein because change is succession planning is important. And when we talk about succession planning, we talk about, of course, the leadership, people who drive the organization. But this culture of continuous learning, improvement, and building the pipeline starts right from your first time managers. And if you build an organization that is built on scientific ways of get and measuring people on the ability of getting things done rather than all the other proxies, this is what essentially we are talking about. And how can coaching be leveraged to do that? And should I'll get back to the question that now, when you had the chance, you spoke about, and you said that coaching is, you make it sound like magic, and possibly it is not, because nothing in the world is magic, right? And so every journey, whether it is training, coaching, succession planning, now has its own bumps in the road, and organizations must be ready to face some challenges too.
Hmm.
When we talk about coaching, to be integrated into succession planning, what are some common potholes organizations might hit, and how can they prepare, and how can they smooth things out?
So if you heard what Prasad said and what Munli also said just before that, and the word that you were attributing when Gopal was speaking is this: there was one operative word amongst all of us, and that is change. And the natural reaction to change is resistance. When you say potholes, I hear it as resistance. And there are three levels of resistance. To put it very simply, there is a theory called Morer's theory of resistance, which says people resist change because I don't get it, I don't like it, or I don't like you. And that is why I resist change. So I think the organization has to, and I love the word that Murli and Gopal, I don't know which one of you said it, the scientific way of looking at it. So I think very scientifically, you'll have to form a process around combating each one of these areas of resistance, which is I don't get it, because the leader might not, with all his other wisdom, might not understand the purpose of the intent of coaching. So the entire premise of coaching sometimes will have to be explained to leaders. There are very, very large organizations as it exists today, who do invest in training as a tool, and for the right reasons. You need all of them to go through the training cycle, but do not have any investment in coaching. So the purpose and the intent of coaching as an investment, I think, must be made aware to all the leaders. The number two reason that I said, when you say I don't get it, the second is I don't like it, which is maybe the leader is not coachable. Now, Prasad did speak about an instance where, he had the opportunity to run an assessment with someone. And in that story, I'm very happy that everybody was open to the results of the assessment. But what if you are not? And what if you still want to look at it very subjectively? Well, in that context, then coaching is not going to work. And I think the leaders must understand that it is not working as an intervention over here. Perhaps some other intervention like industry mentors, etc., might work in that situation. The third is I don't like you. And here I'm going to, probably speak about a very controversial topic, which is the rapport between the client and the coach. It is important because we are also two human beings who have our own set of individual values, beliefs, and identity. It is very important that when you're choosing a coach for the leader in an organization, that you're mindful about the leader's choice also. Between the leader and the coach, there should be some fairly good amount of time which is being spent, whereby they are able to get to know each other's styles of working, and then there is better buy-in amongst the leaders. So yeah, this is what came to my mind when you spoke about resistance. But largely, and also one more point which I would like to mention here is not to compare coaching to any other intervention, because every other intervention has got a time horizon. It is not a band-aid solution for succession planning. Coaching is a long-term intervention. Coaching is a long-term investment. For those of us who invest our money, we should understand that we all consciously make short-term investments and long-term investments, and there are reasons behind why we make these investments. And from that perspective, coaching is a long-term investment because it has a life-changing impact in the life of both the employee and the organization, both the leader and the organization. And therefore, the time that it is going to take cannot be defined. While it's great to get into an agreement that speaks about a time frame, the fact that we all have to realize in the room, the three parties will have to realize, which is the organization, the employee, the leader, and the coach will have to realize is it is also subject to how open and how forthcoming the client is in the coaching intervention. So the organization must remain invested in the
Yes.
entire in the entire intervention for as long as it takes.
And one thing that yes,
Can I just add to what Sridevi said?
yes,
Just to summarize, the coaching works when coachee works.
yeah, there has
Very
to be
true.
yes, there has to be an acceptance that this is something that is an investment to maximize my potential. If somebody says that, hey, you're coaching me because I'm not good enough, if
And
you
which
take
is why
that
we are
one,
conscious and we say co-create. We
yeah,
don't give answers. There is no advice. There is no suggestion, because there is not a single day I have walked in the coach's shoes.
yeah. Another word with co-create that goes a lot these days is personalization. You know, uh, how do you see tailor? And I feel that coaching is by nature, because it's a one-on-one relation that a coach and a coachee has. So how do you see tailoring coaching programs? And this question I'll put to Dr. Murli. uh, Dr. Murli, how do you see tailoring coaching programs to individual role readiness assessments? Like at Antwork, we have this entire end-to-end succession planning as a offering, which starts with assessments with wonderful coaches like you taking things forward, seeing how ready you are at the end of it. So how do you see the tailoring coaching programs taking succession planning to the next level?
See, coaching as an intervention, as an initiative, is a hyper personalized initiative. That's why it is time intensive and resource intensive. Many times people think that coaching is it's just like that. It's about 6 sessions, and it's time intensive. It is resource intensive. It requires a lot of buy-in. I think, to the point that Sridevi made earlier on, everybody needs to be invested in it. Like they say, to for a child to grow, you need the entire village to come together, and for a leader to be born and to be made, you need the entire organization to work for it. So it is resource intensive. Now, and it is hyper personalized as well. Now, coming to, one of the things that I really want you to think about is that coaching is not a remedial initiative. It's not to fix anybody. Okay, I think that's a big mistake most organizations do. It's more a developmental initiative. So if you are really doing a remedial intervention, and I've seen this many a times, and in my practice, many times organizations come and say, "Oh, this guy is very arrogant. Why don't you give him feedback?" I have not met this person. I don't even know this person. How can I give this person a feedback unless the person is arrogant to me in the session, right? Now, so I think many a times organizations use coaches as shoulders to fire from, and things that they find it difficult to say, and so that's a game that a coach should not fall into. Okay, so this is more developmental, and I personally believe that everybody can be developed. It's a question of what time frame are you talking about. My dad used to be in the Indian Air Force, and I was talking to a a trainer pilot. And in the Indian Air Force, a trainer pilot is supposed to be a very coveted job. It's the most most skillful pilots are only made trainers. So he was telling me everybody can fly a plane. There's absolutely no problem. Anybody can fly a plane. Even you can fly a plane, which is true. I can also fly a plane. But the question is, what is the time that you will take to become a pilot? Is a key. We really want people who can quickly, get this whole aspect and become a pilot, because we cannot really invest time, such a long time, 3 years, 4 years in making a pilot. So that is why the selection is done that way. So there is a time frame. I also famously say that you can never push a river faster to the sea. Now, the river will take its own time to go to the sea. Every river goes to the sea, by the way. Some, of course, dry up, but all rivers do go to the sea. So the question is, what time frame is the organization wanting to give this individual to develop himself or herself to the position that they want the person to kind of move on? So I think these are key questions that needs to be asked, and it is a very hyper personalized intervention, highly intensive intervention, highly engaging intervention. So you need to really invest time and money on this if you want to, and it works. It works as well.
It takes me to what I read on LinkedIn this morning. There was a wonderful quote which says that if a flower doesn't bloom, you don't blame the flower, you fix the environment around it. And as you said, it's not a remedial, or it's not saying that, hey, I want to give you a feedback, you're not good at ABC. It is, do I create an environment wherein you do the best that you can, and how can organization benefit from you getting your best, right? So and of course, organizations being multi-dynamics, multiple things at play. We need to understand how coaches and coachee, and as you said, and some pitfalls on the way, and how they look at grooming people as well, right? So Prasad, my question next to you is something that the entire everybody wants to see, hey, what is in it for me, and for organizations as well. uh, they want to see, if I invest in coaching, how do I measure the success of such an intervention? So what matrices should organizations be looking at? What matrices should organizations track to make sure that the coaching programs are hitting the mark? No, they are effective.
Wonderful. Wonderful question. Thank you. Thank you for asking that, because that's one of the questions which keep coming up every time before we get into an engagement. What is the ROI, right? Or what is the return on investment on coaching, ROIC, right? And so here is, from whatever Gopal, Sridevi, and Murli said, coaching is not a one-time fix. Let that be very, very clear with everyone, right? Whoever is listening to this, it's not a magic pill. And I can reiterate, and people will reiterate again and again. It is one of the interventions, right? And what I recommend, when I have been asked to recommend certain things, there are 4 or 5 approaches that I have seen. See, coaching is contextual. One of the other things which people need to understand is it's all contextual. It's not a one size fits all kind of an approach. Context matters, right? So when leaders are nominating people for coaching, then first we need to understand what is the context. Why are they asking people to get nominated for being coached? And the other thing that you just mentioned, Sudhanshu, Sridevi also mentioned, Murli also mentioned, is, are you creating the right environment for that leader to become successful, right? I can't plant a seed, a coconut tree seed in somewhere it's not going to grow. It needs to be, planted in the right soil. Then it needs to be done. Everything needs to be done right. So some of the metrics which I kind of talk about to make sure that coaching works is things that are done around coaching. So for example, are there some 360-degree feedbacks that are also happening? Okay. The other thing that I mentioned about scientific personality assessment. So 360 plus personality assessment can be a great way to identify, are we getting the right people on the bus? Not just on the bus, are we putting the right people on the right seat in the bus? Right? As Good to Great author Jim Collins talk about, you need to have the right people in the bus, but right people on the right seat on the bus. Right? And not every time you're going to get them right. And that's where coaching comes into picture. But I would go one step ahead and also talk about not just individual coaching sometimes work. There can be some training interventions that also need to come in along with built-in coaching. That can actually start becoming and make coaching even more holistic, because you're not just relying on what those conversations are, you're also going back and building up some of their technical expertise which needs to be built, or some other expertise which needs some amount of training and facilitation. Right? Setting clear goals. So one of the ways in which ROIs can be defined is, what is that quantification that the organization wants to do by the end of that engagement? And if you want to have an ROI, it can't happen in 3 months. It can't happen in 6 months. It needs a year's time if you are at an ROI, because years of hardwiring can't be expected to change in just 3 months and 6 months time, right? You need that person to go back, implement, practice, and then see what's really working. So at least a year's time needs to be given to really start measuring that ROI. Right? So 360s, assessments, sometimes even assessment centers, right? Training with inbuilt coaching program is and clearly defined goals, right? If all these things are done well, then that ROI can start becoming measured quite easily, right? And last but not the least, when people nominate people their own teams for coaching, I always ask, has the boss who is nominating the person for coaching, has he undergone coaching himself or herself? Right? Most of the time, the answer is no. So if you have not undergone coaching and you're asking what is the ROI on coaching, that's a bit weird, right? So that's one question that I go back and put it forward, which people don't like. That, why do I need coaching? Everybody needs coaching. I often quote, even a coach needs a coach, right? So are you building that culture of coaching within the organization? And I'd like to quote Standard Chartered Bank here, where they have built this culture of coaching beautifully. They have around 250 odd people, more than 250 odd people within the organization who are coaches, and they coach people plus external coaches. So that's a culture which is being built. Now, can you even imagine the ROI that will happen? People are able to follow their own passion. They find adding meaning and value to their job, right? And at the same time, people are being helped. Look at the kind of engagement that will happen throughout the organization, right? So I think that's the ROI. That's the real ROI which people need to start thinking about. It may sometimes not be completely objective. There may be some subjectivity, but clearly defining goals can something that can be helped, right? Some of the factors which people need to consider here, I would add one more step here, is what do they want from this succession plan? What changes in behaviors that needs to be clearly identified and aligned, right? And in today's world, behaviors like able to adapt, able to network well, think big term, think strategically, right? These are some of the things which people need to start looking at when they're planning for succession. Because people who are growing from bottom, they are more into operations, they are more into execution. They don't think big. So those are some of the behaviors that need to be articulated very, very clearly. Again, context matters, right? I keep coming back to that point. So those would be some of my thoughts. It's a perspective. There can be many other perspectives, but this is something that I would recommend.
No, a wonderful perspective as well, because it is the objective with which you approach coaching which makes a difference. And as Dr. Murli was also saying, that if your approach is remedial, and what you also added on top of it is that if you have a short time frames and you're looking for impact results in a shorter run through a coaching intervention, that is not possibly how it works. It works in its entirety, and as you said, it works better if it is aligned with an integrated plan: 360-degree assessments, some personality assessments, coaches, some training and learning thrown on top of it, and a long-term view of investing in that person's abilities. And that is how we should be looking at coaching. And that is where I think at Antwerp we have that particular approach of leadership, and we work with some of the best organizations currently in India, and we have the, what do you say, wonderful coaches like you be part of this initiative. We'll take a few questions, the last few
So
questions, and then yes,
I
yes.
just want to make a point here. I completely agree with what Prasad said, but I think leadership for me, and I think it's a very important part. Leadership is not a competence or capability game alone. Leadership is a capacity game.
Yeah,
So when you're really developing leaders to take on higher responsibilities, it's not about changing their behavior completely, but it's also about creating a range of behaviors, which means
absolutely.
they do have some limited behavioral patterns. Can we really expand that and have a completely an opposite and be comfortable with it, right? So I think that's the whole thing. It's not a competency or a capacity game, and that's where it becomes extremely challenging to do the ROI, right? Because if
Yeah,
it's competence, I can measure, I can say, okay, on this scale he was this, and after the intervention, the scale improved, and I can show some improvement. But because it's capacity, you cannot really say what were the range of behaviors the leader exhibited before the intervention and what is the range now, and see the whole thing. And this is a very subtle, nuanced understanding of leadership. Many organizations miss this point.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Gopal, again, the last question coming to you. We are, and Dr. Murli hinted at this when he was talking about build versus buy. And now we see, Tim Cook, or there is succession planning going on in Apple. Now, Kotak Mahindra, there are succession planning and challenges related to that going on. Uh, See, succession planning is inevitable. Now, while we might like to think that we are here for eternity, it is going to happen. And how can organizations learn? And two things. One is build this continuous environment of building, grooming leaders, so that succession planning is an eventuality. We talk about it that in personal finance. So if you save regularly, your goals would just be, if you want to buy a house, it will just be another milestone. It wouldn't be something that you. Similarly, how can organizations invest in internal environment, continuous learning, so that you build leaders, groom leaders continuously? And how can you leverage coaching into building that pipeline, so that you stay ahead of the curve and you don't, when it is time for succession planning, you are not, you're not in a fix. How can organizations do that?
Again, I think I would go back to the point that I was making earlier as well. And I think if you really look at the world of work today, very soon we will start seeing Gen Zs and Gen Alpha dominate workforce. Um, may not be in the next 3 to 4 years, but 5 to 7 years for sure. They come with a very different set of expectations, different set of values, different set of exposure to things that they have seen in the world, than a lot of us today speaking today in this conversation. But at the end of the day, there will be, I mean, one, the organization needs to be open, accepting of this new world of work, because the skills and competencies and the behavioral aspects that are required by a leader of the future will look very different. So one cannot really go with an assumption that 10 years ago this was my formula and it will continue to be the same way even going forward. It has to be, again, a constant calibration, recalibration, right? So what I can think of is, again, an acronym called a success formula, if I can say that. S stands for strategize proactively. Keep looking at what is changing around you. Keep looking at what can you do differently. Be at it, if I can say. U stands for utilize structured development programs. So there may be requirement for you to relook at some of the programs that may have become outdated given the pace of change as we are going through. C stands for cultivate executive coaching. So invest in coaching, invest in the philosophy of coaching. Again, it's not with the view that I want an immediate fix, as everyone in the call has said, but with a view that it has to be long drawn, a journey. We always call coaching as a journey, not an event. It has to be seen that way. It has to be long and continuous to ensure its effectiveness. E stands for C, again, stands for continuous learning culture. Work towards building a culture of learning in the organization. If it doesn't exist, create one. E stands for ensuring transparency and communication. S stands for systematic assessments and feedback. Prasad spoke a lot about that through what he said. In the new world of diversity and inclusion, S again stands for supporting diversity and inclusion. And the last one is be agile and adjust and recalibrate. So if we were to look at it from what is needed, if we were to look at the journeys in a manner in alignment with the new requirements of organizations to work, I think that's what we would need, if I can say.
No, definitely. And this conversation uh, is helpful when we do it in this ICW week, because you know all organizations need people to perform, and we are in a world where 20 years back somebody having a better technology uh, was something that, you know say ICICI Bank had a very different technology approach, and 20 years back it just captured market because it was a technology leader. However, with technology becoming equally accessible to everybody, and people are going to make a difference in the way organizations maintain their competitive advantage over time. And that is why, right from the level one to your leaders, your CEOs, your board, uh, investing in people's capabilities long term, so that they have, you know, it creates an organizational impact, and that becomes your competitive advantage. Your people become your competitive advantage. uh, Coaching, I think, is a very nice and effective lever to do that. Before we go ahead, we'll take a few questions that are coming in, and we'll take the question coming in. We will start with one coming from Kiran. It's more about the time. It says that, when should organizations engage coaches to ensure effective succession planning? So, who would like to take that?
I can take that.
Yes, Prashant.
Thanks, Kiran, for asking that question. It's a very, very valid question. The timings within the organizations really dependent upon what is that strategy that this organization is trying to implement. What is the vision, mission? It always starts from there. Where does the organization really, really want to go, right? I think once that becomes very clear, okay, that is when people should start also thinking, then who are the people that they want on board in the right positions to drive that vision and mission. I think these are some of the questions which we first need to be asked. Are they the right people? Do they have the right skill set, the right competencies? Are their values aligned with the organization's vision and mission? Right? Now, if all that is falling in place and if there is a mismatch, the moment they see there is a mismatch, and that's where I keep talking about the scientific kind of assessments which help
Yeah.
you identify such gaps, right? That is the time they can start thinking of bringing in coaching as an engagement, right? So with that being said, the answer to when, it's an ongoing answer. It is not something that, okay, we will do it only at this point in time and not at this point in time. It's an ongoing investment, right? Because as Sridevi said, there is no timelines to such things. We are all WIP at the end of the day. Nobody can say, I am there, I have reached, right? And I like Adam Grant when he says, do you have confident humility instead of having intellectual arrogance, right? So I think having that humility to accept that, yes, I need an improvement and I'm ready for it, right? That's when coaching works. It will
Yeah.
work, right?
I was
So
reading
that's
this
how
book.
I would. That's how.
Please carry on. Sorry, I thought. Sorry for.
No, that's
So I was.
it. That's it. I think the readiness of the coaches, identifying these gaps as we move forward. The context continues to change. We have Chat GPT 4.0 coming, and I don't know if anyone has seen what it can do. You'll be amazed of what it can do, right? So the context keeps changing. So there is no specific when. It's an ongoing.
Yes.
It's an ongoing initiative that one needs to take care of.
Yes. And the point that I was making there was, I was reading this book by Bill Campbell. It's $1 billion coach, wherein he talks that, whenever he goes to say, so people involve coaches right from the time they start building their succession pipeline, people evaluation to see, and the first question he wants to know is whether that person is coachable. And that is what you said. I said that coaching works if the coachee works. If you have the mindset and also organizational objective of what they want, if these two things are aligned, I think that is that adds an added advantage to using coaching. I'll take another question coming from Pratikya, which says that how can coaches tailor their approach? So this is when there is change management happening, change happening. How can coaches tailor their approach to support both the outgoing CEO and the potential successors? And who would like to take that?
Maybe I can take it. See, I think one of the things I would say that outgoing CEO is actually an accomplice in making the incumbent or the incoming CEO a success. So I think we need to really partner as a coach, because you're going to coach the person who's coming in as a CEO. So the coach needs to, I think many a times as we get into a context in an organization, you're not really coaching the individual. Right? I mean, obviously you are coaching the individual, you're engaged with the individual, but you're actually creating ripples in the ecosystem. The
Yeah,
change is being felt. So I think it's important to take the organization context. I think we talked about a context a lot. So the outgoing CEO becomes a partner, and I'm hoping that the outgoing CEO wants this organization to be successful, and he's living in good faith. Now, if the case is a different case, like for example, I've been in situations where the outgoing CEO, does not really is living with some baggage, right? He or she is not really happy with the organization. Then they may not really become an accomplice. So I think we need to play it by the ear. We need to see what's the relationship the outgoing CEO has with the organization, and what inputs the person can provide, so that the incoming CEO can be successful and the organization can be successful. That would be my response.
absolutely. We'll take one more question.
Sudhanshu, just to, I
Yes, yes,
know
yes.
that we're running out of time, but just to qualify, further add to what Murli has said, I think what is important is to understand why, and what Prasad said. What is the context of that coaching specifically? And I think it is to protect the cultural fabric of the organization. Whether it is the outgoing CEO, whether it is the incoming CEO, what we are trying to protect is for the employees, for the people, for the culture of the organization. And that's how the coaching has to be centered.
Absolutely. Okay. There is another question that has come from Kiran, and it is something that we have discussed, but it is how part of it that Kiran asks is, who should determine whether the person is coachable, and how can it be assessed without it being perceived as a judgment? If you come in, if somebody comes and tells me, so Anshu, we are putting you into a coaching because you've not been performing well, the first thing that will come to mind, and Sridevi said that, is resistance. I'll be on a back foot. Possibly, I will not approach coaching in the way it should be. So, so how are we going to answer Kiran's question, and who?
Do you want me to take it? Because I was the
Yes,
one who said it.
yes,
And
please.
and so I think the only person who can determine whether you're coachable or not is you. And this is not to make anyone right or wrong. It is just about certain interventions appeal to certain people and they bring the best out of you. For
Mhm.
example, maybe I'm a very do it yourself person. I love self-paced modules and I really do. And I can sit for hours together and exercise rigor and discipline and learn a new skill. That's the best way that I learn.
Mhm.
Whereas someone else could be is a what we call as a director's actor, and they work best when they are under a mentor, because they love taking directions, they can make it their own, and then they can present it to the world as if it were to be their own. Coaching is an intervention where we are tapping into the infinite wisdom that is inherent in you, if you are ready to tap into it. And the method to tap into it is to share a lot of details, your values, your beliefs, your thoughts, things you probably have never told anybody else. I always say this: coaching is an appointment that you take with yourself. It is only what we call as a nimit matra. It's just a reason that the coach is there to hold space. Otherwise, the space is all yours. So if you're ready to go inwards, then you are coachable.
Yeah. And then there is a follow-up question to that, which says that, how to deal with an uncoachable person?
Yeah,
So
I
I think
think
that is,
I'm just kind of coming here.
go
I
ahead.
think no human being is uncoachable. Okay,
Yeah,
let's be very clear. So we use these terms because it's to say that some interventions are not suitable for some people. Nobody's uncoachable. Everybody can be coached. Now
yeah,
it's a question of priority. Like for example, if you're really wanting to coach a salesperson, okay, the salesperson would best like to use his or her time in being in front of a client, because that's what gets them the work done, right? Now if I'm as a coach going to go and intervene or take away time from them, they're not going to work with me, right? So the question is, what is the priority that the individual has? And not all interventions are suitable for everybody. And many a times the coachee chemistry also is important.
Yeah.
For example, I cannot be coached by every kind of coach. I need a certain kind of a coach. So the chemistry, the choice of choosing the intervention, the choice of choosing the coach lies with the client. If organizations do that, I think then everybody is coachable.
Yeah. A wonderful
Beautifully
answer.
said, Murli. Very nice.
Yes. And yeah, okay. So wrap this up. We'll very quickly do a very fun rapid fire. Okay, and it is something that we'll ask. I'll ask you a question. Uh, it is coffee with Sudhanshu without the gift hamper. So whatever comes to your mind, please go ahead with it. And
We
so
are
the
happy
first
to send
question.
the addresses.
Yes, absolutely. So the first question is: if you have to describe your coaching style using a movie title, what would it be? Sridevi, if you
जिंदगी ना मिलेगी दोबारा.
lovely. Okay. And if you could coach, Dr. Murli, if you could coach any fictional character, who would it be and why?
Yoda from Star Wars, because I
Why?
personally feel that coaching is transformative for both the coach and the client.
Right.
I would like to coach Yoda.
That's one of my favorite characters of all times. Okay. And Prasad, this is a question that a lot of people put on LinkedIn. If you could give one piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Ah, so here is a twist. Coaches don't give advice,
Good one.
right?
Okay.
So if I have to turn around that question and say, what is that one coaching question that I would have asked to my younger self? That would have been, what would you want to pick up as one skill that would have helped me when I was young, when I was in my corporate days, 10, 15 years back. So that answer, when I reflect back, and this is again, this answer has come right now when I'm listening to this question, this answer comes that I could have networked well. I could have built more connections. Being an introvert, sometimes that doesn't come naturally. There were a lot of beliefs which were held, which got broken the moment I was coached. So had I been coached quite early in my career, that is something would have come to me as my own advice to myself.
Okay. Gopal, the last question to you. If you could swap roles with any famous coach for a day, who would it be and why?
So coaches are not famous. Coaches are impactful, right? And I have had the privilege of having Sridevi, Murli, and Prasad coach me at many points of time in my career. So I would rather
Hmm.
want to swap my days with each one of them.
Okay. Nice. So see, it has been wonderful talking to all of you over the last 68, 70 minutes. And what I understand is, and as I said, when we were prepping for this, is that I am the least knowledgeable. I come as a third party perspective to this conversation. And what I believe and what I've understood from your conversation, your inputs has been that, you know, if I have to transcend myself, I have to possibly, it's like the story of Hanuman, that you have some powers within you and you don't know what they are, or even if you know, you are inhibited by situations around you, the environments that you are in. And if you have to break that and take yourself to the person that you always wanted to be, if you can approach coaching with that mindset, it is an investment. No, so and this brings to a wonderful that thing that Indian mythologies have. You had Jamant as one of the first coaches in the world, if I look at it like that. So, that is what I have learned from this conversation, and I'm very sure that people who have tuned in and who will continue to tune in when it goes on other channels, they will find this entire conversation very, very fulfilling and informative. So thank you so much, Dr. Murli, Prasad, Sridevi, and Gopal. Thank you so much for joining in. And any last words before we wrap it up and say goodbye, very quickly, if you can?
So, Sudhanshu, thank you for
Yes.
putting this together. It's an
Yeah.
extremely important initiative given that we are in the International Coaching Week, and
Yes.
the awareness about coaching is something that we need to all work towards. And the more we speak, the more it will get better. So, thank you for putting this together, and lovely being part of this panel as well.
Thank you, Gopal.
Thank you,
And
Sudhanshu. My motto is to create happy faces in happy places.
yeah,
And I know that coaching as a tool of intervention certainly will deliver that.
I love this entire aspect, and happiness, positivity is something that I live my life with. So Sridevi, yes, it gives me all the more reason to connect with you separately.
Sure.
Yeah, yes, and Prasad, anything that you would like to add before we wrap this up?
No, firstly, thanks for inviting me and allowing me to share my thoughts in this forum. The one mantra that I keep sharing in every forum is what I would share here. Everyone should experience coaching at least once in their lifetime.
Yeah.
Right? And that can be quite transformative for each one of them, but at least once. Right? That's what I would like to say. Thank you once again for inviting.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
thank
It
you.
was a
Thank
pleasure
you,
to have you.
Yeah, thank you, Sudhanshu and Gopal, Sridevi and Prasad for this wonderful, engaging conversation. For me, I think the biggest wastage that a human collective can indulge in is wastage of human potential.
Yeah.
And I think coaching is a very good intervention to maximize that, to reduce wastage. I'm not saying that we can completely bring it to zero, but we can certainly reduce the wastage. So if we can do that, organizations will be a better place, communities will be better place, the country will be a better place. So I really believe that coaching is a change initiative that organizations can benefit from.
Yeah. And this brings me to the movie that Sridevi said before I sign off, Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara. So we don't get another life we don't know. And it is all the more reason for us to achieve all that we want and all of that we are capable of. And if anybody out there can help us achieve that, we should definitely, and as Prasad said, we should taste coaching once to see if I can break all the constraints that are coming towards me, things that are stopping me be the best version that I can. So I would sign off. I know that we are a little late, but I'll sign off by saying this: thank you so much, and this is for all of us being the best versions of ourselves in this life with the help of you wonderful coaches. So this International Coaching Week, thank you so much for doing what you do. And now I believe that you will continue to add values to people that you touch, professional lives that you touch. So thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much.
Thank you for having us. And
Thank you.
namaste.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.